Elliott, addiction specialist. Coming clean with me.
Hello and welcome to Coming Clean with me. My name is Elliott Wald and I am the addiction specialist. And here today, my special guest, David Smallwood. David is a 46-year-old man, father of 6 and almost a grandfather of 10. Almost, he's got 9 at the moment. And David's going to talk about how he built his business to his window cleaning company, how his journey from having an addiction, from cannabis, growing up on a council estate, to getting into hard drugs of heroin and crack, to incarceration, to having a loving family, and to being 15 years clean. Fucking 15 years. I mean, let me shake your hand for that to begin with.
Thank you.
Right. I mean, that's fucking great. So, David, tell me what it was like growing up for you and how it was like growing up for you and your family.
I grew up on an estate in Luton. I've lived there all my life, still live there now. I was heavily into cannabis at about 11 years old, so it was rife in our area. And then all of a sudden, these other older guys were introducing the younger lot to what we now know as heroin, but we wasn't told it was that at the time.
What did you think it was?
Well, we just thought it was just another thing because we were smoking it, and I always thought heroin was injections and stuff like that. We were smoking it in joints at the time. I went on to smoking it on foil and stuff, but I'd never ever injected in my whole addiction years. I mean, I was addicted for a good 15 years. I gave to drugs, before I became clean 15 years ago. So, so growing up on the estate had a massive influence on all of us around there. I mean, it became like an epidemic at some point when I was about 16. Everyone was doing it. It was like the new thing.
So it was because all the people around you on your estate were using that you kind of got drawn into it.
Yeah. Peer pressure. Just being one of the gang sort of thing. If you didn't do it, you were sort of not in the gang.
I get that.
And I did this for a couple of years before I even realised I was addicted, like it was just one of them things. I think
that's interesting. What was it that suddenly made you realise one day that I actually have an addiction?
Well, I always thought with like my mum growing up smoking and drinking, that's all she ever did.
Cigarettes, not heavily. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, cigarettes, yeah. No, I never saw anyone else doing it. It was just the people on the estate. So, so it just everybody was doing it, and then all of a sudden I think it was a case of like, hold on a minute, when you try to sort of stop doing it, and then you realise, hang on, I'm physically ill here. But there wasn't any help for heroin addicts in them days, and I didn't really want to admit to my family and think that I had a problem. And it was just so much easier at the time to just keep going. Then obviously I couldn't hold down jobs. I couldn't. I just couldn't. I had to have it every day, and that
you were using daily.
Daily, yeah.
How much money?
Well, it could be anything. To be fair, when I was on the heroin, it wasn't actually that much. It was probably about £80 a day, max.
80 a day?
I know, but it sounds to me it wasn't.
That's £560 a week.
I know, but then when you take it, when all the crack started to come around, it became like it is now. It's like crack and heroin always come together.
Right.
So then you could go out, and I mean, I've done some bad things in my time, I've never done anything nasty.
Listen, let me say this, David, right? Because this is an interesting thing. I have clients who come to see me for my help, who serve up, who've sent 7-10 years for armed robbery. I don't give a flying fuck. I'm not here to judge people. Right? I'm here to help people.
That's right.
And I think sometimes when you share your story of the things that it took you down the road of doing and the path that it took you to, can help others from going down that path or getting out of that path. Yeah. So listen, there's nothing to be ashamed of.
No, that's not, like I say, I've never been ashamed of my past. Okay. I wish I could have started a bit different, but I'm a true believer that your past makes your future. Somewhere along the line, I had the strength and the courage through my family, and I tried to give up for my family, and I tried to give up my children, my mum, and call me selfish. I never really gave up until I really wanted to. You know what I mean? I tried to give it up for everybody else. It didn't work.
That's a very, very valid point because, I have a lot of family members who contact me and say, my son, my brother, my sister, my cousin, they have this addiction of Coke or whatever it may be. I mean, that's my specialist area. I just want to broaden the horizons with this podcast. And how can I help them? And I think, yes, encourage them, be there for them, but they have to really want to do it, right?
Right, that's right. I mean, you can't. I think everybody wants to stop using. Nobody wants to be on drugs for the rest of their life, because with heroin and crack and cocaine or any addiction, it can take away. It takes away your self-respect. It takes everything from you. And I believe that I'm one of the lucky ones that managed to keep it all together at the right time. But there was one time with my daughter. I was walking. I'd already stopped taking drugs. Okay. I was walking.
How old was she at this time?
She was about 6. Well, I think she was still at school. Well, 15 years. Yeah, she was just in her last year at school.
Okay.
And by then, I'd been stopping and starting and stopping and starting. And I was talking about my daughter last night, but there was this one time I'd stopped taking drugs. I'd already accomplished like half a window cleaning round, which was my business startup. And I mean, I had a car at one point. Then I had to stop driving because I lost my license. I ended up with a ladder and a bucket, and I walked around Stopsley. I mean, you know Stopsley.
Yeah, I do. I know it well.
I walked around there with a ladder and a bucket. Now, I was doing that to start with, to support my habit by giving bringing some money home for the family as well. And when I didn't have the car anymore, what do? Do I give it all up? I had a load of customers by then, so I walked. And from that, people still know me now as the walking window cleaner in Stopsley.
The walking window cleaner.
Yeah, I went to Wembley once to watch Luton play. And,
Yeah.
and I was walking down Wembley Way, and about 3 people were pointing at me like, "There's the walking window cleaner from Luton." Like,
you know what? You're going to have about 1 million people now who know. That's the walking window cleaner who's fucking clean of 15 years. Respect.
Yeah, I know. I do get that. I get a lot of my customers that I've had for 15 years, and they've seen me in a bad place, and they've seen me come, and now I'm driving brand new vans. It's endearing when someone notices it.
Yeah.
Like when you're only doing it it's your life. It's my life. This is how I was, and this is how I am now.
So you reached the point where you decided that, okay, I can't do this for other people, but I'm going to do it for me now. So what happened?
So I was walking through the Arndale in Luton one day, and I was going to my drug counsellors to collect my methadone, is what they give you when you're coming off it and that, or they stabilise you. And I saw my daughter and her friends come walking towards me. And we caught eye contact, and she grabbed her friends and ducked in the shop.
Wow.
Now that, to me, like, I knew I had to do something before this, but this was the deciding point that I remember in my life, in my head. I walked past the shop. I didn't want to go in there and try to sort of say something. I didn't want to embarrass her. But I walked about 200-300 metres up to my drug counsellors, and I was in tears. I don't know what took over me. Something took over me. Like, I was just in tears. And I've walked into the drug counsellors that day, and I said, "Martha, something's got to give. I've got to get off all of this. I've got to get my life back. I've got to push forward and grab. I need to get the self-respect back, my respect from my children and my wife, because they've always been there for me no matter what. Even in my darkest times, and we've had some dark times as a family as well. Yeah. So that time, and it just has it. And we was talking about this last night. The alcohol worker, Gwen, I knew her because I'd been dealing with the services for so many years. She walked past just as I was talking to my counsellor. Now, she never really said anything. She just stood and listened, and I didn't know at the time. But the next day, I got called down, and she had arranged. She goes, "Look, we've got available funding for rehabilitation, but I'm an alcohol worker and I have to give it to someone for alcohol." She goes, "But I've got nobody to give it to. There's no one here that's come in here that is worth me spending that type of money on. But I heard your story yesterday, and would you be interested?" And within 2 weeks of that conversation, I was off into a detox centre. Went off from the detox centre to, like a rehabilitation centre.
Yeah.
To be fair, I'll be honest, I didn't finish the rehab.
Okay.
I got to the rehab after coming off off the methadone and that, already clean of heroin and drugs. My mind was right. I was in the gym. I'd met this boy that went to school with my daughter. I'd met him, and in the gym, he was 16, I was 32, and we became best friends. And I said this I was the best man at his Indian wedding, and I said this to over 1,000 Indians, like, this boy does not know what he did for me at that point in my life. And he didn't. Until I said that at his wedding, he never knew what he did for me. But what he did was gave me a different person, a different kind of place. I wasn't that street kid anymore. I had a business that I was working with. I had the gym life and
a purpose,
exactly that. And that gym life sort of, admittedly, I did go a little bit obsessive over it, but I found, and I said to the wife and that I'd rather be obsessive over this than drugs. This is helping me. This is making me healthy. It's making me more confident.
You know what? I love that you just said that, because one of the things that I'm a great advocate to my clients, to people who listen, to people who watch the TikTok, the YouTube, is, listen, once we have an addictive personality or an impulsivity to want to do something to an extreme, right? What would you rather do? Would you rather sit there and use coke, crack, heroin, drugs, or would you rather be addicted to exercise? I know which one I would rather do every day of the week, right?
Exactly that, yeah, exactly that. And that's exactly what helped me.
Because you threw yourself into the gym.
I threw it, not just the gym, but the diets.
Yep.
You know, like the process. I got addicted to the process. But the thing was, it was making me a better person. I came out of myself. You know, like I when I was in the gym, I was getting better feelings, and then coming home and you know yourself, you get on the scales, or you look at your waist, or you look at your abs when they're coming out in the summer, with what purpose you're training for. And I was getting much better feelings from that than I ever did from any drugs that I've taken, ever.
That's amazing.
And I still do.
And that's amazing because, you know, when you think about it, we are dopamine seekers. We seek dopamine. You know, dopamine is the currency that scientists use to measure our feelings, right? And we release dopamine with whatever we're doing. You know, like you have chocolate, you release dopamine. You do drugs, you release dopamine, obviously a much, much higher level than the chocolate. But when you exercise, you're releasing that dopamine.
Yeah.
So that's your fix.
That's my fix. Yeah, that is it. I mean, I've had some physical things that I couldn't go to the gym for. I couldn't push and pull for like 16 weeks, but I was still in the gym doing legs.
Yeah.
I was still there doing abs. I was still riding my push bike every morning, you know. So yeah, I can honestly say that is my fix nowadays.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's funny because even when you had that injury, we'll call it, that way that you couldn't train for 16 weeks, you still put yourself in that environment to give yourself mental clarity.
Yeah, and focus as well, to get through that part of, you know, and I mean, I'm an addict. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I've sussed it. I haven't sussed it. I'm in recovery, and I've been in recovery for 15 years. I've relapsed into cannabis use due to stress and depression from my mum dying and grief. Yeah, I'm now away from that again. You know, I've realised my problem. I've worked it out, and I've got back on track again. You know, so now.
But you never went back to hard drugs.
Never. No. I've never would. I've had some really tough times the last year. I'd say 18 months between. Last 3 years since Mum passed away with the pandemic. It was 2 days before the pandemic.
Okay.
You know, so, and I didn't deal with it at the time because I've got a whole family here that are looking to me. I'm the successful one. I'm the one that's the warrior. You know, the one with this attitude. Yeah, the strong one. So to sit and talk about grief and that, I kept it inside, and then one day you just implode, don't you? You know, and it all came out. And like I say, to cover things, it was like, oh, it's only cannabis. So I started smoking a bit of cannabis again, and then it got to the point where I was smoking like 1,500 quid's worth a month. Wow. You know, this strong American stuff that probably ain't no different to the one you buy here. They're just charging you twice as much for it, but you know how it goes. So yeah, but I'm back on track again. I'm back, back in the gym, and I've got them feelings again, and I want to push forward. I want to push my business forward next year. I'm gonna write 23 off as a bad year. You know, I've had so many good years.
Listen, I think if you use it as a learning experience, I think that's beneficial. If you learn from things that you've done, you empower yourself to do things differently in the future.
Exactly that.
So tell me something. You know, at your height of crack and heroin, you know, in your heyday at the max, how much are you spending a week?
I've done robberies and spent £2,000 in 2 nights.
£2,000 in 2 nights.
Yeah, you know, like I've sold things like, you know, there's not a lot that I haven't done. I mean, I wouldn't go and mug an old granny or nothing like that. Do you know what I mean? I'm not that type of person, but I've sold drugs, I've done robberies, armed robberies, like you say. I've done, you know, whatever I could to try it. Shop burglars used to be a specialty of mine because I felt like I wasn't hitting anybody in particular. It was just an insurance
to feed your addiction.
Just to feed my addiction, yeah, and to put food on the table for the family. Because
to put food on the table because you were spending your money on addiction.
Yeah.
So either way, you were feeding your addiction by committing this crime.
Yeah.
To get your next fix.
Yeah. Like I say, from the height of my addiction,
How old were you at the height?
I would say between 18 to 29.
Okay.
But between 9 years, I would say from 20 all the way through to 29. I spent 5.5 years of that in prison.
In and out, or in one go?
In it. Out of that 9 years, 5.5 years.
Okay,
Not just one sentence.
How many times did you end up in prison?
Probably, I would say about 6 or 7 times in that time.
Usually 4?
Just cars was a big thing. I was doing a lot of car ringing, stealing cars to order, stuff like that. That was the main crux of it. Driving was mainly my thing, but I've done other things. These are the things that are on my criminal record.
Yeah,
we won't talk about the things that are not.
They're spent anyway. They're spent anyway.
There you go. So, you know, it's.
Do you think? Here's a question, right? Do you think if you never had that addiction, you would have ended up in prison having done those things?
I don't think I would. No, in fact, I know I wouldn't, because, like I say, 16. By the time I was 16, I had 2 children. Me and my wife.
You're still together
now, 33 years later.
Give a shout out to her.
Shout out to Trina Smallwood.
Hey.
Love you, darling.
He loves you.
She knows that.
Yeah, of course.
But like I say. I had jobs, like I was a line manager at Amazon for 6 years. Do you know what I mean? I had a pension
while you were using.
Yeah, while I was using. That's what I'm saying. Like I stopped using,
but
then started again.
Okay.
You know, if this was one of the little pinpoints. To be honest, that was one of the main reasons why I started my own business, because of my criminality from such a young age.
Yeah.
I was aligned to. I was at Amazon, but I ended up getting arrested for stealing £2.7 million worth of stuff from there, whereas we've sort of like...
Whoa, stop. You got arrested for stealing
from Amazon.
How much?
But over 2.7 million. I only got charged with 160,000 in the end.
2.7 million pounds worth of goods you stole from Amazon.
Over a year.
Over a year, yeah. To feed your habit.
To feed my habit, and obviously 2 other guys that were involved. But we were.
Wow.
So that's the thing. But then from that, I've got theft from employment.
Is that why you got 12 TVs?
15 actually.
Okay, sorry. Tell me something. You know, listen. Let's focus on the prison for a moment.
Yeah.
That 5 years you said over that in and out. In and out. How did your drug use go when you were in prison? Because
to be fair, I used to stop taking drugs when I was in prison. I mean, you'd be getting some around there, so it'd be like you might have the odd little thing. But again, as soon as I got there, I was looking for a kitchen job and gym.
Right.
And this is how bad it got in Bedford prison. There was a gym screw called Mr. Apps. Yeah, he's retired now, lovely fella. It was so fat bad that he would see my name on the list as I'd come in on remand. So he'd come at 6 a.m, get me out and make me do circuits. He never did it for anyone else. He'd be like, "You've been on that Luton diet again, ain't you, Smallwood? Get out here." And he'd make me run and do circuits. And after 4 or 5 days, all the heroin and that had come out, and you start feeling good again, and you get on your education. Like I got a carpentry and joinery level 2 from prison. I did all my GCSEs in prison when I was over 20, because I didn't do it at school. I was messing around, stealing cars, being an idiot. Do you know what I mean?
Because of drugs.
All because of drugs, yeah. I mean, it started like, it's not just the cannabis. I mean, you go back to 10 and 11 when I was in the children's home, we were sniffing glue. You know, that was a massive thing in the 80s, wasn't it? Glue sniffing.
It's almost like you wanted to escape from reality, from life, and you were looking for any method of escape.
Yeah. And I was very, very much easily led, shall we say. I've always been like that. My headmaster, when I left junior school to go to high school, he said, "You think before you act, and don't be easily led." And but I never listened. Could have been a totally different story.
So when you're in prison, you found most of the time you didn't use during that 5 years?
I did use,
okay,
but not to a point where I had a habit. Because I wasn't one of these like lads on the wing that owed him, ended up, which is what comes back with it. Then you get battered, or you put yourself onto another wing. Do you know what I mean? Like, that wasn't me. I was more. Whenever I was in prison, you get a PO, a personal officer. I always got on with my personal officers, even in young offenders. Like, when you're the big boy, you're fighting every day and all that. I still got on with my personal officers.
Do you think that the reason you used a lot less in prison is because you were away from your environment?
I very much do, yeah. I very much do, yeah. If I did use it, it'd be for one day, because the point is, even though I was in prison, I wanted to get out. From the day, like, when I got 2 years, 3 years, whatever sentence I got, I always looked to getting out and what my best possible route was. In young offenders, I used to fight every day, and then you find out you end up doing the whole sentence because you're losing remission because you're from the wrong area, or because like you've got to stand up for yourself because you don't want to be looking like an idiot when someone's saying it's my guy on the pool next or whatever. It could be anything. Someone could look at you the wrong way in young offenders, and you're fighting. I went to one prison, I think it was Glen Parva, for 7 days. I had 52 fights.
Wow.
Like it's like every meal time someone's trying to whack you with something, or do you know what I mean? And because I was from Luton and not from Feltham or London, that was just a daily routine, but you can't not go down and get your meal.
It's amazing because, the whole point about going to prison is to rehabilitate people, but you're suddenly put in this pen along with everybody else where everyone wants to be top dog and you've got to be alpha male.
That's right, yeah.
And that's not helping to rehabilitate,
no, it wouldn't. Nothing. I don't think anything I did in young offenders at all helped me in life. I think all it did was make me realise when I got to adult prison, to proper HMP, that this is just I'm not joking. I've had some of the best laughs in my life in prison. I mean, can you imagine, like, some weeks you growing up hooch, everyone getting pissed on this blimmin' apple and orange juice cider, or someone up in the freeze, his cells just exploded with hooch. Now the whole prison stinks of alcohol. Do you know what I mean? Like, some of these things I look back and think, this was hilarious times, but it was only hilarious times because you had to make the best of where you were.
Right.
I mean, Bedford prison, we used to throw lines, from the top of the sea wing over the wall. Yeah, so people on the outside could tie anything they wanted on.
And what sort of things would we?
Well, people were getting phones in, like stuff like that, drugs and that. Do you know what I mean? Like I used to get paid to throw the lines because I was in a workshop, so I could get the bolt and the line to do it. So I used to get paid for that part. I didn't really care what else come over. And it all stopped one day because they hired the razor wire, because someone from Liverpool decides to go around a prison telling him he's getting a gun over the wall. Do you know what I mean? All that money that people were making from drugs that were coming over and that, and people were thinking, Screws must be bringing it in, this, that and the other. It was just a simple line over the wall. And then a phone call, they'd tie something on and it'd come back, So...
How did your usage affect your family? Talk me through that.
Oh, very, very badly. I mean, with me, like, I am so grateful and so... I'm actually really proud that all 6 of my children, they've dabbled in cannabis and stuff like that. None of them have ever. None of them are addicts. I mean, my oldest daughter, she's 31. She's just opened up. She's got a very, very high-paid job anyway, but she's in an estate agency and stuff. But she just opened up her own estate agency in Luton called Property Hive.
What's the name?
Jamie Lee Smallwood, and Property Hive in Luton.
Property Hive in Luton. Shout out.
Yeah. So for all your sales and lettings, give her a shout. Jamie should be much appreciative of it. She's doing that. Stevie, she's got 3 daughters and a son now, an unexpected son, so that was great, grandson. She does what her mum does. She works in childcare and in nurseries and stuff like that. Then you got David, who's my double, basically. We work together with business partners in Window Gleam in Luton, window cleaners and any external cleaning.
Little advert there.
But then you got Casey and Duran, they're both working at TUI in the airport doing aircraft replenishment and technicians and that, so they're doing really well.
It's a funny thing. I'm going to interrupt you. It's a funny thing, right? Because growing up with a father who had an addiction and a big, heavy addiction by your own admission, right? Yeah. You go one of 2 ways. Because people go, my mother was an alcoholic, my father was an alcoholic, my dad took gear, my mum did this. How else was I going to grow up? But I think 2 things can happen. You can either follow in their footsteps, or you can see it because they can't not see it, right?
That's right.
No matter how much you hide it, they can't not see it. And they think, this isn't the life for me.
Yeah. I honestly do believe, though, obviously with me not being there a lot of the time as well, that Trina plays a massive, massive part in the way they've grown up in that respect, because my wife has never taken drugs, and a lot of people, I've seen it, like with my friends, it was always them and their missus, them and their partner, them and their girlfriend, or them and girls, or even getting girls and then getting them on gear and prostituting them out and stuff like that. I've been in situations like that where I just thought, you arsehole, like... But that's what these type of drugs do to you, you know. Like that's that you hit rock bottom, and then some people want to keep going. Like me, I managed to crawl my way back up, you know. Like, and everything I do now is for my family, you know. Like we live to pay our bills, to live nice, to buy nice things, you know, like to be comfortable.
But it
to go on
affected
holiday.
them, right?
Oh, but majorly so, because for 5.5 years they didn't have dad. You know, like, and the thing that made me feel so bad as well is that I grew up with my mother, yeah, and my nan. I don't know my dad. Yeah, my dad left before I was born, and basically that was it. You know,
Do you think not growing up with a dad and living on that estate with those people who did drugs, those blokes around you became your
father figures,
like a father figure?
Yeah, you looked up to him. Yeah, you wanted to. You see all the money and the cars. I mean, I was buying cars when I was 14 years old.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean? When it was all the hashish stuff back in them days, you know, and that's the same thing. Like I was driving around in nice cars when I was 14. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So. I taught myself to drive, you know.
Did you?
Yeah. Do you know what? It's funny because I didn't pass my driving test until 8 years ago. 38 years old.
Wow.
Right. But I drove since I was 13 years old. Do you know what I mean? Like people's cars that were insured, just so that I could get around to do what I was doing, you know. So yeah, it's definitely like had a massive effect on my children, you know. And it took me, I've got to say, at minimum from that day of rehabilitation, at least 3 to maybe 5 years for them to see that no, Dad's not going back down that road.
To build the trust,
to build the relationship. And I have a great relationship with all 6 of my children. Shay was the only one that I didn't mention just a minute ago, and we go out every weekend. He rides motocross, and he races. He's not the best in the country, you know. He gets top 20 finishes out of 40. I find that great for me, you know. It's not the cheapest sport, you know, to start up, but I mean a race weekend could cost me 200 quid. Okay. But that £200 for me and him to spend together as father and son. No one else comes. So, well, now his girlfriend's coming, so we're going to have to do something about that and get her out of the way because we don't.
Quality time, though.
No, but quality time. Yeah,
I get that 100% because I've always taken my son to the gym. You know my son.
Yeah.
You know, since he was like 11 years old. He's 24 now. And that quality time, that bond, that whatever you do, you can't replace that.
No,
you know,
you
them
can't.
years when you have an addiction and you want to push everyone away because all you want to do is go and get your drug.
Yeah,
you know, you're rebuilding all that.
Yeah, I mean, in them days, we've got times where Trina's had to hide money because I've never stolen from my family. Yeah, never. But I would try and like say, "Oh, lend me some money and I'll give you it back later." And you know, times you could give it back, or you get arrested and you've gone away for 6 months, and I've just left her with no money. Do you know what I mean? So she used to have to hide money and stuff from me, things like that. That doesn't make you feel great, you know, when you realise it. So it's all these things, and you just think.
At what point did you realise it?
I think it was about when my first prison sentence was 20. I went inside for being in a stolen car and that. And the funny thing that made me laugh about it all was I had a bit of a reputation with the police in Luton. The guy that was driving the car got less time than I did, and I was sitting in the passenger seat. Do you know, how does that work out?
History.
Do you know what I'm saying? It's like weird.
They're waiting to catch you.
Well, that's what it is, yeah. I mean, when I was 14, 15, I used to have police waiting up the road because they'd know. I wasn't in stolen cars, but they knew that I was driving certain cars.
Yeah.
So they would park in their undercovers and wait for me to come round and then swarm me in and things like that. I've had all that when I was younger, you know.
You know, when I listen to you, one of the things that I want the people listening and watching this to take away from them is it doesn't matter how far down you end up going. It doesn't matter how bad your addiction is. It doesn't matter what drug you're addicted to. There's always a way out.
There is. And you've got to want that way out. I mean, because some people, they'll sit there and they'll tell you till you're blue in the face that they want to stop. And I've tried to help people. I do a lot of social media.
Yeah.
I'm going to start up TikTok very soon and just try and give something back. I don't want anything from it, but if I could touch someone's life, because I've been on the bottom, I've been rock bottom, yeah, and I've managed to crawl my way out. I've done it if it's passion, whether it's love for my family, whether it's just self-respect, you know, like when you're walking out, you haven't washed for a week. You know, like, and all of a sudden you wake up in the morning, you jump out of bed and you're running out. You'd run from here to London for a £20 fix. Do you know what I mean? And if you've only got that £20, you won't break into it. You'd literally steal a car to go to wherever you've got to go. Do you know what I mean? Like, what sort of life is that for me? Let alone the family that I had behind me at the time, you know?
And have you ever see those people that were on the estate that got into drugs at the same time as you? You ever see any of them?
It's funny, you know, because there was one boy, I'm not going to mention his name, and he's in town now, and he sits outside Lloyd's Bank and the banks and that down there begging, right? Now, this
I know
guy,
what you mean.
yeah, do you? Yeah, with this guy, a lot of us looked up to. The guy, he had it all. He had the women, the cars, the money, the jobs, the work, you know, and now he's lost everything, and he's there, and he's 60-something years old, and he's bent over in town begging. You know what I mean? And I say to Trina, like, I used to look up to him. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, in fact, I did like a long remand, with him and someone else, and the whole time we was on remand, them two were plotting for me to take the rap for this charge, In the end, we all got away with it, but they got out way before me, and I stayed in till trial. They ended up saying to me, like, they were trying to get me to take the rap for this because I was the young one, I was the naive one, But at the end of the day, you got out on bail before me. They went around the whole estate telling everyone that I was the grass, I was this, I was that, like. And then in prison, it got to a point where some of their people were believing it, and I had to stand and fight for my right and say, look, like, you better go on the numbers. People are going to do you. People are going to stab you out. I don't give a fuck, mate. Bring it on, because I know, there's my depositions. Read them. You know what I mean? And luckily, one of the guys in there, another big face from Bedford, he knew a bit about law, and he looked through my paperwork. My barrister was telling me, go guilty on this because they're going to get you with this, that, and the other. And I was not ready to go to trial because I'd not spoken to my barrister long enough. So I changed my barrister to this guy's barrister. This guy's barrister came, worked, and didn't even get paid for it until after the trial. 2 days in, they threw the whole case out. So I could have done 10 years there for something that they set me up for.
It just shows you that.
And now he's sitting there homeless, begging, ain't got nowhere to stay.
If you'd have seen that, this is the thing that I'd love to somehow get out. For those people who are starting to get into this addiction and into this spiral, into this web, and are surrounding themselves with these people, if they had an opportunity to see 10, 15, 20 years into the future of the people they admire and look up to and have got money and drive a nice car, and then see where they're at, I mean, that's an eye-opener. Oh, God, it would be, yeah. God, I totally would have changed my life if I could have saw that, But hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But there's always hope for anybody that is struggling with addiction. I mean, I still say that I'm an addict. We're all addicts. If you addictively or have to do something on a daily basis to get that fix, you're addicted to it. It could be gambling, sex, everything. Absolutely. I've seen it all when I was in rehab and stuff.
Absolutely.
And the point is, if you really want it in here, it's got to be in here, you can make it. You can make it. I mean, I've got a successful business of 15 years now, And admittedly, I could thank my drug addiction for this business, because I wouldn't have got up on them snowy days, walking, trudging with a ladder just to make 100 quid a day.
I'm not sure that you can thank your drug addiction for that. I think that you can thank your deep value. Somewhere inside of you said, I'm going to make sure that my family don't go without food, no matter how fucking deep into this addiction I am.
Yeah.
There's something in your core that said, I'm still going to provide.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it is.
While I was there, but I couldn't provide while I wasn't.
Yeah.
And do you know what I mean? And at the time, I didn't see that. I thought, well, I'm going out doing all this and I'm giving you money, but I haven't given them time. I haven't given the kids the time. And I did suffer a lot.
You felt a lot of guilt, right?
Exactly what I was just about to say. I felt so much guilt 5, 6, 7 years ago. So I tried to make it up. But the kids, well, just buying them stuff, taking them out shopping, stuff like that, material things.
Really?
And that made me feel better, because I was, at the time...
Made you feel better.
Exactly, but it didn't make them feel better. Because they were like, Dad, you don't get arrested anymore. We're not worried that the police are going to come booting down the door. We're not worried that we're not going to see you from 1 month to the next. That is progress to me.
Yes.
I could take my daughter out for I got my daughter Jamie, the oldest one, I got her into the gym life. She was party girl, up until 28. I mean, she had a little boy when she was young, but she's always been a worker, hard-working girl. But sometimes she'd switch her phone off. One day we had to put a Facebook post out. Has anyone seen our daughter? I mean, how bad does that feel?
Especially coming from what you got into.
Yeah.
Your mind must have been racing.
Yeah, hoping, what is she doing? Where is she? But I know she's just a party girl. Her and her friends would be in London. They'd be here, there, and everywhere. All the clubs, all the big clubs and that. House music. But then she just had a daughter just over a year ago, AJ, our our granddaughter, and it just changed her. But she got into the gym through me taking her to the gym, and then all of a sudden now she's not obsessive over it, but she's a pretty girl. I'm not going to die. Both my daughters are very pretty girls.
Off the table, boys.
Yeah. Well, they're taken anyway, so. But yeah, so she loves gym life, and I've been to the gym with her. Like we go, me and Stevie. When I had a bit of problems and I was in the hospital with my accident, she was the first one there to make sure I was all right. And she lives in Leighton Buzzard. I don't get to see her as often as I want to, but she was the first one there. The first face I saw when I sort of opened my eyes.
They've stuck by you, haven't they?
Oh, they have, yeah. And I accredit that to
because you were a fucker.
Oh, well, exactly. Let's put it that way. We are. I was an arsehole. I was an arsehole. Like I just wasn't there. Like when I was there, I would be Dad, but it just don't seem the same. Like when I look back, it wasn't the same then. Now
I've got a question for you. If you now could look back and give yourself at the age 18 to 22, 23, any advice, what would you tell your younger self?
What would I tell my younger self?
Yeah.
To stop being a fucking idiot. What are you doing? You've got the world around you, like you've got a loving wife, like all them kids, you know what I mean? Like so much to live for, and you're just going down. You need to take a step back, Dave. You need to get back in, you need to get in the gym now, because I used to do boxing and stuff when I was younger, but never weights. But then once I started the weight, so like I say, I got addicted to seeing the changes. Like you're sitting there slogging away for about a month, then all of a sudden something changes. Your biceps are bigger, your chest looks a bit better. And I've always been quite egotistical as well.
Nothing wrong with that.
I know. I think men get that a lot, don't they? So I always want to look the best I can. I always want to wear the best clothes. I always want to have the latest stuff. So yeah, I'd just say you're not going to be where you want to be if you carry on like this sort of thing.
That's good.
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Listen, it's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you for sharing.
Elliott, yeah.
And I hope everybody gets something from this. Yeah. One last thing.
Go on.
What is the one thing that you would advise somebody who's struggling with any form of addiction right now?
Ask for help. I mean, if you really deep down in your heart want this, deep down, and I know you do, then reach out. There's going to be someone. If this video can help you, if Elliott can help you, if anybody that you're related to, anybody you know, anyone you look up to or respect, or just get in the gym, like anything like that. There is another way. It might seem like a high mountain to climb, but once you start climbing it, them steps get easier. Once the steps get easier, the purpose becomes better. And before you know it, you'll be in a place where you can sit back and say, all right, I did that. I've learned from it, and now I've moved on. That is perfect thing to say.
David,
Elliott,
appreciate your time.
I appreciate
buddy.
your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity, my friend.
Thank you.